The Year of Luigi begins now. It's Good Intentions, episode 22. Of all the games to suffer from the long delay between the Family Computer's Japanese debut in 1983 and the NES's mainstream American launch 3 years later, none took it on the chin quite so badly as Mario Bros. It's difficult to overstate how much impact the timing of the game's home launch had on its reception between Japan versus the West. When Nintendo released the home version of Mario Bros. For Famicom in 1983, the arcade game was just a few months old. Having a largely uncompromised conversion of a brand new arcade title for a home console was a pretty big deal. The quick and accurate home release probably didn't do much to help Nintendo's arcade earnings, but by this point I think the company was already looking toward consoles as its future. Consoles were still considered toys at that point in history, which put them more securely into Nintendo's wheelhouse as a toy company, a market they understood and could more effectively control than the volatile arcade. When Mario Bros. Reached America, however, it arrived amidst a deluge of other Nintendo arcade hits. It also arrived after its own sequel, Super Mario Bros., a game that practically reinvented the medium. The original Mario Bros. Didn't even stand a chance. Sure, it was fun, but it felt a generation removed from the sprawling, nuanced, constantly changing adventure offered by Super Mario Bros. That's not really fair to this game though, because it really is quite good on its own terms. It acted as a critical evolutionary linchpin between Donkey Kong and Super Mario Bros., greatly improving on the jump mechanics of the first game and the maneuverability of the protagonist, Mario. It also introduced a number of more superficial elements that would become mainstays of the Mario franchise, like turtles and pipes and Luigi. But really, it's the play improvements that allowed Mario franchise to become an actual thing that would not only exist, but go on existing for another 3 decades with no sign of slowing down. Mario Bros. Definitely does belong to the generation of games that came before its super sequel, and the hero's jump physics give it away. While Mario can spring higher and survive falls from greater heights than he could in Donkey Kong, he still has very golden arcade-era restraints on his aerial movements. Here, Mario can basically only leap at 3 angles, straight up, slightly forward, or in a pronounced forward arc resulting from a running lead-up. Despite the relative clunkiness of his bounding powers, though, Mario Bros.' design possesses sufficient care and subtlety to allow for some slick evasions and maneuvers. It helps that Mario himself feels more responsive than other playable characters of his era. While he can't pivot with the ease and flexibility that his super self would, he does react far more quickly than his contemporaries did. The limits that afflict Mario simply demand players take greater care with their movements and take more time to plan ahead and keep an eye on hazards. The game's design contains just the perfect balance of difficulty and simplicity to make this an interesting prospect. Mario Bros. Takes place in a sewer of sorts, one being overrun by an assortment of unfriendly creatures. Turtles, crabs, and flies take turns emerging from a pair of pipes in the upper corners of the screen and march downward to the bottom level, whereupon they'll hop into the lower pipes and re-emerge at the top again. In short, the creatures that bedevil Mario and his brother Luigi, debuting here, simply run in an endless loop. As with many ancient arcade games, the edges of the screen have a wraparound property, so that when an enemy or protagonist vanishes off the side of the screen, it'll reappear at the opposite edge. The sewer creatures are programmed with a simple sort of collision detection. When they bump into another object, be it a coin or a different enemy, they'll immediately reverse direction. And that's really about all there is to the hazards. A stream of creatures that drops from the pipes and circles downward in an infinite 2-axis loop. It's the player's task as Mario to clear all the creatures from the sewers. Once you've taken out one set of critters, the next wave emerges faster and more dangerous than the last. Mario himself carries over his basic capabilities from Donkey Kong, his heel turn in Donkey Kong Jr. having evidently been forgotten. Here as there, he can run and jump, but he can't directly harm his foes. This time, however, you can't rely on hammers to see you to safety. Instead, Mario can only stop enemies by hitting them from below. When you jump into a platform from below and punch it, the ground ripples slightly, upending a foe directly above. This will turn an enemy on its back for several seconds, giving players a safe window in which to run up to the inverted creature and kick it safely off screen. Much like the rest of the game, the ground ripple effect has just enough complexity to make it interesting. If you strike a foe from directly below, it'll fly straight up into the air. But if you hit the ground slightly ahead of or behind the bad guy, it'll flip at a 45-degree angle. You can use this technique to pull off advanced maneuvers. such as hitting the ground between two adjacent creatures to cause them both to flip simultaneously in opposite directions. Or you can hit the ground near a platform edge to cause your foe to flip off the platform down to Mario's level, allowing you to kick it without having to leap up to the higher patch of flooring. After you clear the initial round of shell creeper turtles, more advanced creatures appear. First, you meet the sidestepper crabs, which require 2 punches from below to upend. Later, you'll have to face fighter flies, which flip over with a single hit, but require careful aim as they get about by taking small hops. You can't invert a fighter fly while it's in midair, so instead you have to punch the floor beneath one as it lands. Mario also has to contend with non-living hazards, including icicles called slip ices, which emerge from the pipes and will take root when they pass over the center point of a platform, covering that section of flooring with frictionless ice if they're not destroyed. And fireballs technically make their Mario Universe debut here, serving as a hurry-up prompt as they would in Wrecking Crew. Other Mario standards appear here for the first time as well. The ubiquitous green pipes of the Mushroom Kingdom debut in Mario Bros., along with the POW blocks that can be used twice to jolt the entire room. So too does Luigi debut here. For the moment, Luigi simply appears here as a palette-swapped version of Mario, but he would go on to become a key figure in the Mario universe. More importantly for this game though, Luigi's presence adds greatly to the Mario Bros. Experience. Here we have the debut of Nintendo's trademark cooperative yet competitive multiplayer design. While you can certainly play Mario Bros. Solo, it becomes a different game when 2 people go head to head. Both Mario and Luigi players share a common goal: to rid the screen of enemies. And you definitely need to work together to take out the creatures. But at the same time, Mario Bros. Engenders a competitive element as well. This being an arcade game, score rules above all, which means the game provides incentive to interfere with the other player. And Mario Bros. Also provides the tools with which to create that interference. At a basic level, you can physically obstruct the other player, getting into their way, snatching up coins and kills before they can. But there's plenty of room for bad behavior as well. For starters, hitting the floor beneath your partner has the same effect as hitting the floor beneath a bad guy. You can't flip Luigi upside down, but you can send him flying, possibly sending him backward or off a platform, or even into an enemy. You can also do devious things like flipping an inverted enemy right side up a split second before the other player kicks it, causing them to lose a life. Partnerships can quickly sour and turn into an outright war in Mario Bros., transforming the game into an all-out, head-to-head fight on a battlefield clogged with rapidly advancing creatures and an endless torrent of fireballs. This represented a marked change from the standard multiplayer design of 80s arcade games. And while I won't pretend to be able to state authoritatively that Mario Bros. Was the first game to invent the style of play, I don't think it's any sort of stretch to say that it perfected it. The tension of Mario Bros. Multiplayer mode would become a standard for Nintendo games, ranging from Balloon Fight a few years later to the console-based New Super Mario Bros. Games. All in all, it was an impressive take on a brand new arcade game. It wasn't quite arcade perfect on NES, but it came closer than any other 1983 Famicom release besides Donkey Kong Jr., while being a superior experience to that game. Mario Bros. Would go on not only to inspire an amazing sequel, but also to produce a number of notable remakes and revisions. We'll look at those in a later episode, but long story short, it's a pivotal title in the Nintendo pantheon. But again, by the time the NES version reached the US and Europe, Mario Bros. Was yesterday's news. Perhaps this discrepancy between our Mario Bros. Experience and Japan's accounts for why Nintendo has so often gone back to the well of this game. For Japanese fans, it remains a great reminder of a cutting-edge game experience. Or, then again, maybe not. Maybe Nintendo just keeps revisiting it because it's a great game in its own right. In any case, a true classic. Next time on Good Intentions, The Last of Kong.